Have you ever wondered what would happen if a woman who is so desperate that she's just waiting to die on a park bench in the freezing rain of New Orleans, suddenly the most powerful and dangerous man in the city stops his car, steps out into the rain, looks straight into her eyes and says, "You're going to catch your death out here." In just one fateful rainy night, from the depths of homelessness, hunger, and cold, abused and abandoned by her ex-husband, she is suddenly brought into a world of luxury, full of power, but also full of blood, terrifying secrets, and enemies ready to kill without blinking. Will the intense, burning love that explodes between them be strong enough to overcome the darkness of the past, the pursuers who never let go, and the horrifying truth about to be revealed? Follow along right now to discover a love story full of drama, pain, and passion that takes your breath away. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. On a rainy December night in the French Quarter of New Orleans, Emily Harper sat soaked through on a weathered iron park bench, her thin body curled tightly against the relentless downpour. The humid chill seeped into her bones like a cruel reminder of how far she had fallen. At 28 years old, she clutched her grandmother's simple gold locket, the only thing left from a life that once held promise, with fingers numb from cold and hunger. Inside the locket was a faded photo of her parents, smiling in better days, a tiny keepsake that now felt like the last thread connecting her to any sense of home. Emily's clothes, a threadbare coat scavenged from a donation bin and jeans worn thin from endless walking, clung to her malnourished frame. She hadn't eaten properly in days, surviving on half-eaten beignets begged from tourists or scraps from cafe trash bins. Sleep came in fits on park benches or under awnings, interrupted by the wind whipping through the historic streets or the distant wail of jazz music that mocked her isolation. Her body ached from the repeated miscarriages that had shattered her marriage. The bruises from Travis Kane's rages long faded, but the humiliation burned fresh. He had thrown her out months ago, blaming her for everything, leaving her with nothing but the locket and a heart torn by grief. The world blurred through tears she no longer had the strength to shed. Why fight anymore? The unfairness crushed her, losing jobs because exhaustion made her late, shelters turning her away when full, kind strangers walking past as if she were invisible. Her mind spun in dizzy numbness, a violent inner storm of despair and lingering pain from nights spent shivering alone. She felt powerless, pitiful, her once resilient spirit frayed to breaking. Then, headlights cut through the rain. A matte black Escalade, sleek and imposing, slowed to a stop nearby. The rear door opened with quiet authority. Footsteps approached on the wet pavement, measured, unhurried. Emily tensed, fears surging through her confusion. Men in the dark rarely meant safety. But the voice that followed was low, calm, carrying a weight that silenced even the rain's patter. "You're going to catch your death out here." She didn't look up at first, guarded and timid, her soft voice barely a whisper when she finally spoke. "Please, just leave me alone." But slowly, painfully, she lifted her head. The man stood a respectful distance away, tall and broad-shouldered, fair-skinned with dark hair slicked back by the rain. His expensive wool coat gleamed under the streetlights, a stark contrast to her rags. His deep brown eyes held no pity, only a raw recognition, as if he saw straight into the emptiness consuming her. He shrugged off his coat without hesitation and held it out. Warmth still lingered in the fabric, carrying scents of sandalwood and faint cigar smoke, luxury she hadn't known in years. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly, his voice edged with an inner conflict she couldn't yet name. Emily stared, horror and curiosity clashing inside her. Who was this stranger offering kindness in a city that had shown her none? Her heart pounded with anxiety, the world tilting in disorienting shock. Why would you help someone like me?" Her words came out polite, but trembling, fearful of the answer. He was silent a moment, his gaze dropping to the locket clutched in her frozen hands, to her thin wrists marked by old scars of despair. Gnawing guilt flickered in his eyes, remorse from a past loss that haunted him, a violent emotional war raging beneath his composed exterior. 3 years ago, his wife Lucia had been taken in a rival confrontation, leaving him with 3 grieving children and a heart armored in ice. Sentiment was weakness, he had told himself. Yet here, seeing this broken woman, something cracked violently inside him. "Because I know what it looks like when life's thrown you away," he said, voice low with consuming remorse. "And I know the darkness when there's nothing left." He draped the coat over her shoulders gently, without touching her. It enveloped her like a shield, heavy with warmth and impossible wealth. "My name is Nick Moreau." The name hit her like thunder. Everyone in New Orleans whispered it, the powerful figure who controlled shadows others feared to tread. Shock numbed her further, dizziness sweeping as the gap between his world and her misery yawned wide. He continued, voice steady but laced with inner turmoil. "There's a place nearby, warm, safe. My children need someone steady, and you need somewhere to go." Emily's mind reeled in confusion and fear, suspicion warring with a desperate, overwhelming curiosity. Tears welled as unfair reality tore at her. Why now? Why him? But in his eyes, she saw a fierce surge, passionate and intense from that first moment, a protective love igniting against his better judgment, tearing at his guarded heart. Slowly, legs trembling from cold and shock, she stood. The rain pounded harder, but for the first time in months, a flicker of hope pierced her torment. She didn't take his hand, but she followed into the waiting warmth of his world, the stark divide between poverty and power, pulling her toward an unknown fate. The matte black Escalade glided away from the rain-slicked curb in the French Quarter, its powerful engine a low, steady hum that felt worlds apart from the howling wind Emily Harper had endured for months. She sat in the back seat, swallowed by Nick Moreau's heavy wool coat, the lingering warmth of it pressing against her thin shoulders, like something she had no right to feel. Her fingers, still numb, clutched the edges of the coat as if it might vanish at any moment. The scent of sandalwood and faint cigar smoke wrapped around her, luxurious and foreign, a cruel reminder of the chasm between her ragged existence and the man beside her. Emily's heart pounded with confusion and fear, her body trembling not just from cold, but from the dizzying shock of this sudden shift. Minutes ago, she had been invisible, curled on a park bench, contemplating an end to the endless nights of hunger and humiliation. Now she was here, in a vehicle that probably cost more than she had earned in years of scraping by. Suspicion coiled tight in her chest. Why would a man like Nick Moreau, whose name carried whispers of power and danger through every corner of New Orleans, stop for someone as broken and worthless as her? She stole a glance at him. He sat beside her, but not too close, gazing out the tinted window as streetlights streaked across his sharp features. Fair-skinned, dark hair pushed back, he looked every inch the wealthy, untouchable figure the city feared and respected. Yet there was something in the set of his jaw, the faint tension in his broad shoulders, that spoke of inner torment. Gnawing remorse flickered behind those deep brown eyes. Remorse for a wife lost 3 years ago in a rival confrontation, for the guilt that had armored his heart against any softness. He had sworn never to let sentiment weaken him again. Love was a liability, a wound waiting to be exploited. But tonight, seeing Emily's hollow cheeks, her malnourished frame shivering under threadbare rags, something violent tore inside him. A fierce, burning surge rose unbidden, a protective love so intense it terrified him, clashing against the walls he had built. The silence stretched, heavy and condensed, broken only by the rhythmic swipe of windshield wipers. Emily's voice, when it came, was soft and timid, barely above a whisper. "Mr. Moreau, sir, where are we going?" He turned to her slowly, his gaze softening in a way that made her breath catch. "Somewhere warm, somewhere safe." His voice was low, steady, but laced with a conflict she could almost feel, the war between his calculated world and this impulsive act of mercy. She swallowed, anxiety twisting her stomach. I don't understand why you're doing this. People like you don't help people like me." The words carried the weight of her humiliation. Months of sleeping under awnings, digging through trash for food, shelters turning her away because they were full, kind faces looking past her as if she were a ghost. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and sudden, at the unfairness of it all. Nick's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on his knee. Consuming remorse flooded him, remorse for the life he led, for the enemies who had taken Lucia and left his children motherless, for the cold empire he had built on ruthlessness. Yet here was this woman, destitute and powerless, stirring a passion he had buried deep. It burned now, intense and overwhelming, tearing at his resolve. "Because no one should be left to freeze alone," he said quietly, the words rough with emotion he rarely allowed. "Not tonight." Before she could respond, the escalade slowed. Through the rain-streaked window, Emily saw figures emerging from the shadows of a side street. 3 men in dark hoodies, moving with purpose toward the vehicle. Her heart lurched in horror. The driver, Vinny, broad-shouldered and silent, muttered something low. Nick's expression hardened instantly, the tormented softness vanishing behind steel. "Rival scouts," Vinny said. "They've been tailing us since the quarter." Emily shrank back, fear numbing her limbs. She had seen street confrontations before, quick, brutal flashes in the night that left people bleeding. But Nick remained calm, though a violent inner conflict raged. Protect her, keep her safe, no matter the cost. "Pull over," Nick ordered quietly. Vinny hesitated. "Boss, now." The Escalade stopped under a flickering street lamp. The 3 men approached boldly, one tapping the window with mocking confidence. Nick lowered it just enough to speak. "This street belongs to the Moreaus," he said, voice deadly calm. "Turn around, walk away." The leader smirked. "Times are changing, Moreau. Word is you're getting soft, picking up strays in the rain." Emily's breath hitched at the insult, humiliation burning anew. Nick's eyes darkened, remorse and rage clashing inside him. Soft? He had buried that part of himself after Lucia's death. Yet this woman beside him, fragile and trembling, ignited a fierce protectiveness that overrode everything. "Last warning," Nick said, his tone carrying the weight of unquestioned power. The men laughed, one reaching toward the door. In a blur, Vinny was out, flanked by 2 guards from a following vehicle. The confrontation was tense, words sharp and threatening, postures aggressive, but no blows landed. Nick's presence alone, the reputation preceding him, shifted the air. The rivals backed down slowly, muttering threats but retreating into the shadows. Emily watched in stunned disorientation, the world spinning. Minutes ago she had nothing. Now she was at the center of a power she couldn't comprehend. Nick turned back to her as the Escalade pulled away again. "You're safe," he said, voice softer now, though inner turmoil still burned. That passionate surge grew stronger, an overwhelming need to shield her from every cruelty the world had shown. Tears spilled down her cheeks, quiet and condensed. "No one's ever stood up for me like that." His hand hovered, wanting to comfort but restrained by his own conflict. The gap between them, his wealth, his power, her pitiful poverty, yawned wider, yet drew them inexplicably closer. The drive continued through quieter streets, gardens and historic homes emerging as they left the quarter behind. Emily's exhaustion warred with curiosity and lingering fear. Another unjust moment struck when they passed a crowded shelter she had been turned away from weeks ago, its lights mocking her former desperation. Finally, the vehicle slowed before enormous iron gates flanked by stone pillars. Security cameras blinked red. Guards emerged, bowing their heads in respect as the gates opened. Emily's dizziness returned, shock and numbness overwhelming her. This was no ordinary home. Nick watched her reaction, his heart tearing violently. He had everything: wealth, influence, a fortress. Yet guilt consumed him for the emptiness inside it since Lucia's death. Now, bringing this broken woman here, offering her safety in exchange for caring for his grieving children, felt both right and terrifying. The love igniting within him was passionate, burning, impossible to deny. As the Escalade rolled up the long paved drive toward the glowing mansion, Emily clutched the coat tighter, tears falling silently. From absolute rock bottom, cold nights, hunger, humiliation, to this impossible warmth. The unfairness of her past life clawed at her, but a tiny, guarded flicker of hope stirred. Nick glanced at her, the intensity in his eyes deepening. Whatever this was, it had already changed everything, for both of them. The Escalade rolled forward along the long, stone-paved drive, gardens trimmed into perfect order on both sides, even in the depths of winter. Emily Harper pressed her face closer to the window, her breath fogging the glass as the mansion came fully into view. 3 stories high, built in classic Southern style, with towering white columns, wide balconies, and tall windows glowing with warm yellow light from within. It was breathtakingly beautiful, the kind of home featured in magazines she had once flipped through while waiting in doctor's offices, back when she still had a home of her own. Yet the beauty carried an edge, cold and commanding, like power made solid in stone and iron. Security lights cast long shadows across the manicured lawn, and men in dark suits stood at intervals, their eyes scanning the darkness before sliding away respectfully as the vehicle passed. This was no ordinary residence. This was a fortress. Emily's legs felt unsteady even before the car stopped, dizziness sweeping through her in waves. Shock and numbness warred inside her malnourished body, thin from months of skipped meals, sleep-deprived from endless cold nights, huddled against wind that cut like knives. How many times had she been turned away from overflowing shelters, or woken by police flashlights telling her to move along? The unfairness of it all tore at her heart now, violent and unrelenting. Why had life stripped her bare, left her powerless and pitiful, only to drop her here amid impossible wealth? Nick Moreau opened the door and stepped out first, the rain still misting lightly around him. He turned back to her, his deep brown eyes holding a storm of their own. "You need to know," he said, voice low and clear against the quiet night. "You will be safe here. No one enters without my permission." Emily stepped down slowly, her worn shoes meeting the cold stone with a faint crunch. The coat he had given her hung heavy on her narrow frame, a shield against the chill, but also a stark reminder of the divide. She looked up at the towering facade, then at the guards who avoided her gaze as if she were an insignificant detail in their powerful world. Horror mingled with heightened curiosity. Who was this man who commanded such respect, such fear? And why had he chosen her, broken and destitute, to bring into it? Her voice emerged soft and timid, polite despite the anxiety twisting her stomach. "Mr. Moreau, sir, this place, it's like nothing I've ever seen." He nodded slightly, but inside, gnawing remorse clawed deeper. 3 years since Lucia's death in a rival confrontation that should never have touched her. Guilt that had turned his heart to stone. He had built this empire on calculated ruthlessness, telling himself sentiment was weakness. Yet this woman, with her hollow cheeks and trembling hands, ignited a passionate surge that burned fiercely from the moment he saw her. An overwhelming love, intense and tearing at his armored soul, clashed violently with his fear of loss. Protecting her felt right, yet terrifying. Another vulnerability in a life where weakness invited destruction. The front doors opened before they reached the wide steps, as if the house itself anticipated his arrival. A middle-aged woman stood there, full-figured, with black hair threaded gray and pinned neatly, her face stern, yet not unkind. Sharp brown eyes swept over Emily from head to toe, not judging, but assessing every detail. The soaked rags beneath the coat, the thin wrists, the exhaustion etched deep. "This is Rosa Martinez," Nick said, his tone carrying quiet authority. "She runs everything here." Rosa nodded, her gaze lingering briefly on the faint shadows of old hardship on Emily's skin before looking away. "Follow me," she said, voice warmer than her appearance suggested. Emily glanced back at Nick, confusion and fear swirling. He gave a slight nod, reassuring yet laced with his own inner turmoil, then turned toward a shadowed hallway, his tall figure dissolving into the mansion's depths. She followed Rosa through the vast entryway, marble floors gleaming coldly beneath her feet, crystal chandeliers glittering overhead like frozen stars. Oil paintings lined the walls, scenes of old New Orleans, portraits of stern ancestors, perhaps. The air carried faint scents of polished wood and fresh flowers, luxury that made Emily's poverty feel even more humiliating, more pitiful. Her mind reeled in deep disorientation, months of scavenging scraps, enduring wind-filled nights that left her aching and alone, and now this opulence that seemed to mock her past misery. They climbed a grand staircase, the carpet soft underfoot, a sensation so foreign her balance wavered. The corridor above was long, lined with closed doors that held their silence like secrets. Rosa stopped at one near the end, opened it, and stepped aside. "Your room," she said simply. "There's a lock on the inside. No one enters if you don't wish it." Emily stepped in, and her breath caught sharply. The room was not enormous, but it was warm, golden lamplight casting soft glows across cream walls and curtains. A double bed with crisp white sheets, thick comforter, and plush pillows invited rest she hadn't known in ages. A small table by the window, a private bathroom visible through an open door. It was the most beautiful space she had ever entered, meant for her, a destitute woman who had slept on benches and begged for warmth. She stood frozen, numbness giving way to a violent inner tearing. Tears welled hot and sudden at the absurdity, the unfairness. Why had life been so cruel, stripping her of everything? Home, health, hope, only to offer this now? Shock made the world tilt, pain from old wounds, physical and emotional, flaring anew. Footsteps sounded behind her. She turned, heart pounding. Nick stood in the doorway, face unreadable, but eyes softened by that burning passion. "Rest tonight," he said, voice rough with restrained emotion. "Tomorrow you'll meet the children." Then he was gone, footsteps fading. Rosa gave one last assessing look and closed the door quietly. Emily stood alone in the stillness, fingers brushing the soft sheets as if they might disappear. She touched the pillows, the blanket, real, clean, warm. In the bathroom mirror, under bright light, she confronted the ghost staring back. Tangled hair, ashen face, cracked lips, eyes sunken from hunger and sleepless nights. Thin, malnourished, marked by cold winds and humiliation. This was what poverty had made of her, what Travis's cruelty and life's injustices had reduced her to. For the first time in months, tears came, not silent drips, but a quiet breaking. She cried for the nights shivering alone, for the meals missed, for the dignity lost in begging and being ignored. She cried for the unfair turns that had left her powerless, and for this sudden, impossible kindness that tore her heart apart with hope and fear. She showered under steaming water that washed away grime and chilled memories, skin flushing with warmth she had forgotten. Clean sleepwear waited on the bed, soft cotton left by Rosa, like an unspoken embrace. Climbing into the bed, she pulled the comforter high, clutching her grandmother's locket. For the first time in endless nights, she felt safe. Exhaustion claimed her quickly, but even in sleep, the inner storm raged. Confusion, guarded curiosity, and a flicker of something new stirring amid the torment. Outside, Nick stood in the shadowed hall longer than necessary, his heart violently conflicted. Bringing her here, offering protection, it awakened the love he had buried, passionate and consuming. Remorse for Lucia clashed with this fierce need to shield Emily from every cruelty. The wealth around him, the power. Suddenly, it all felt hollow without someone to share its warmth. Whatever came next, he knew one truth. He would guard her with everything he had. Sunlight slipped through the heavy cream curtains and laid warm, golden stripes across Emily Harper's face the next morning. She jolted awake, heart pounding in panic, sitting bolt upright as her eyes swept the unfamiliar room. White sheets, soft comforter, elegant furnishings, not the cold park benches or wind-whipped awnings of her recent life. For a moment, dizziness gripped her, the world tilting in deep disorientation. Then memory flooded back. The rain-soaked night, Nick Moreau's coat, the fortress-like mansion. She was still here, in this impossible place of wealth and safety. Her breathing steadied slowly. She looked at her hand. The grandmother's gold locket rested in her palm, its chain having left faint marks from being clutched through the night. She had slept deeply, without the nightmares of hunger or cold that had plagued her for months. A real bed, warmth enveloping her thin, malnourished body. It felt like a dream she didn't deserve. Emily rose, washed her face, and combed her tangled hair with items Rosa had left. In the mirror, she still looked pitiful, sunken eyes from sleep deprivation, cheeks hollow from endless skipped meals, but slightly less ghostly after one night of rest. She opened the door cautiously and stepped into the quiet hallway. Daylight softened the mansion's imposing chill, but the luxury remained overwhelming. Polished wood banisters, artwork on walls that probably cost more than she had ever earned. Following the scent of fresh coffee and breakfast, she descended the grand stairs, through the vast living areas, and into the kitchen. The space was spacious and luxurious, warm lighting glowing from elegant fixtures over marble counters and high-end appliances. A southern mansion's heart, filled with the aroma of eggs and toast. Rosa stood at the stove, turning eggs in a pan. She glanced back at the footsteps and nodded. "Sleep well?" she asked, voice low but kinder than the night before. Emily nodded timidly, her voice soft and polite. "Better than I have in a very long time. Thank you." Rosa set a plate of eggs, toast, and orange juice before her. "Eat. You'll need strength." Emily sat, the food's warmth nearly bringing tears. She couldn't recall the last proper breakfast, perhaps before Travis threw her out, before the miscarriages and abuse that left her scavenging humiliating scraps. While she ate, Rosa leaned against the counter. I should tell you about the children before you meet them. Emily looked up, curiosity mixing with anxiety. Mason is the oldest, 10 years old. Guarded, cold since his mother died. He's pushed away every helper we've tried. Rosa sighed. Sophie, everyone calls her Sophie, is 7, sensitive, quiet, nightmares often. She watches everything but speaks little. And Lucas, 5 years old, the sweetest, open, smiling, but he remembers his mother least, being so young. Emily's throat tightened. How did it happen? Rosa's gaze drifted to the window. Lucia was wonderful, gentle, loving. 3 years ago, a confrontation meant for Mr. Nick. She was hit instead, right in front of them. Emily felt horror surge, understanding the house's cold grief, Nick's tormented eyes. The unfairness tore at her, children losing a mother to violence, while she had lost everything to cruelty and poverty. Before more could be said, running feet thundered. A little boy burst in like a whirlwind, curly brown hair wild, big eyes bright, cheeks rosy. Pajamas with cartoon prints, barefoot. He stopped short, seeing Emily, mouth open in curiosity. "Who are you?" he asked, voice small but unafraid. Emily blinked, a small, genuine smile forming, the first in ages. "I'm Emily, just Emily." He tilted his head. "Emmy? Can I call you Emmy?" She nodded, heart-warming despite fear. He grinned, gap-toothed. "I'm Lucas, 5 years old. Do you like stories? My dad tells good ones, but he's busy." Rosa slid pastries toward him. "Eat, Lucas." He climbed beside Emily, legs swinging. His open trust pierced her. After months of invisibility, this affection felt overwhelming, confusing. A small figure appeared in the doorway, a girl with long, dark hair, big eyes shy behind the frame, watching cautiously. "Sophie," Rosa called softly, "come say hello to Miss Emily." The girl stayed hidden, like a deer assessing danger. Emily offered a gentle smile, understanding that fear all too well. No pushing. Then a sharp voice cut the air. "Who are you?" Emily looked up. A taller boy stood, arms crossed, eyes narrowed suspiciously. Dark hair like Nick's, face angular beyond his years. "Another helper?" he asked coldly. "How long will you stay this time?" Emily met his gaze steadily, no flinch. "I didn't come to replace anyone." Mason scoffed. "Good, because no one can." He turned and left, footsteps echoing. Lucas watched worriedly. Mason sat a lot. Emily's heart tightened. She knew that anger masking pain. Heavy footsteps approached. Nick leaned in the doorway, gaze taking in the scene, pausing on Emily with that burning intensity. A small nod, encouragement that meant everything. The children carried grief's weight, yet in this luxurious home frozen by loss. Emily felt the disparity violently, her own pitiful poverty against this opulence, now tasked with warming hearts scarred like hers. Nick's inner conflict raged, remorse for failing Lucia, yet this woman's quiet strength stirred passionate love, tearing his guarded world apart. Quiet stillness settled, but Emily knew the healing, the drama, had only begun. A week slipped by in the vast Garden District mansion, and Emily Harper began to find fragile threads of rhythm in a world that still felt like a borrowed dream. Each morning, before the sun fully crested the magnolias outside, she rose quietly and descended to the kitchen to help Rosa prepare breakfast. The luxury of it all, the gleaming marble counters, the high-end appliances humming softly, the scent of fresh coffee brewing, stood in violent contrast to her memories of pitiful poverty. Thin mornings, scavenging for anything edible, malnourished body aching from cold winds that whipped through sleepless nights on benches. She learned small, vital things, warming Lucas's milk to just the right temperature so he would drink it without fuss, cutting Sophie's toast into star shapes because the girl would eat little else, placing Mason's eggs on a separate plate. He disliked his food touching. These details, remembered and tended with care, felt like tiny anchors in the storm of her inner turmoil. After breakfast, Emily accompanied the children to school. Vinny drove the sleek black SUV, and she sat in the back with all three. Lucas always claimed the spot beside her, his small hand gripping her sleeve as if fearing she might vanish. He chattered endlessly about superheroes, about jazz music he heard on the radio, about a book with colorful pictures. Emily listened to every word, her guarded heart softening. His unguarded voice was the purest sound after years of silence and isolation. In the afternoons, she picked them up and brought them home for homework. Drawing on her old teaching days, she turned the grand dining table into a classroom space. Lucas, too young for real assignments, sat nearby scribbling heroic figures and declaring them masterpieces. Sophie worked in silence, long dark hair curtaining her face, but she no longer hid completely. Sometimes, shyly, she slid a drawing across the table. Flowers, butterflies, a simple house, then darted away before thanks could come. Emily treasured each one, stacking them carefully in a drawer like fragile gifts from a wary heart. Mason remained distant, rising early to prepare alone, completing homework in isolation. When Emily offered help, his answer was a cold no, door closing firmly. Yet she persisted quietly, leaving meals outside his room, folding clean clothes on his bed while he was away, checking discreetly if he had eaten or rested. She asked for no gratitude, only needing to know the boy carrying oversized pain was cared for. She understood that guarded shell all too well. One afternoon, returning from school, the SUV encountered tension. A rival vehicle blocked a narrow Garden District street, men leaning out, postures bold. Vinny slowed, hand alert. Emily's heart raced in horror and anxiety, old fears of street danger resurfacing. Nick, informed instantly, arrived moments later in another car. The confrontation was tense, words sharp, stares unyielding, but Nick's commanding presence shifted the balance. The rivals backed off without escalation, muttering as they retreated. Emily watched in stunned numbness, the disparity tearing deeper, her past powerless misery against this protective power. Nick's gaze met hers briefly through the window, burning with that intense passion. Inside him, remorse gnawed fiercely, guilt for Lucia's loss clashing with this overwhelming love for Emily, a surge so passionate it terrified his guarded heart. Evenings brought quiet moments. Emily read bedtime stories, her soft voice filling rooms once silent with grief. Lucas curled close. Sophie listened from the doorway. Mason pretended indifference but lingered nearby. In stolen glances with Nick, across dinner tables or hallways, the air thickened. His eyes held violent conflict, remorse for the past, fear of new loss, yet a burning need to protect and cherish her. Emily felt it too. Confusion, guarded curiosity giving way to a warmth that numbed old pains. One night, alone in her room, Emily discovered a new secret pressing against her healing heart. She was 8 weeks pregnant, a fragile life from before the final cruelty. Terror gripped her, history of loss, fear of repeating misery. She hid it, the inner tearing intensifying. From destitute hopelessness to this luxurious safety, now carrying new life amid overwhelming change. The house warmed slowly, like spring touching winter ground. Emily's patient care mended small fractures. Yet deeper storms loomed. Her hidden pregnancy, Nick's inner war, external threats circling. In condensed stillness, Emily often paused, tears welling at life's unfair twists. From humiliating poverty, thin, aching, alone, to this impossible family beginning to claim her. Hope flickered, guarded but growing, as bonds strengthened day by day. Late nights in the grand kitchen became quiet sanctuaries for Emily Harper and Nick Moreau. After the children slept and Rosa retired, the mansion settled into hushed luxury. Crystal chandeliers dimmed, marble floors cool and silent under soft lighting. Emily often lingered, drawn by the warmth of the space, washing a final dish or simply sitting with a cup of herbal tea, her thin hands wrapped around the porcelain for comfort. The contrast still tore at her. Once scavenging cold leftovers from cafe bins, malnourished and shivering through wind-filled nights, now surrounded by opulence that felt borrowed, undeserved. One evening, Nick entered unexpectedly, loosening his tie after a long day. His presence filled the room, tall, fair-skinned, commanding even in exhaustion. Emily tensed, guarded curiosity mixing with anxiety. "Mr. Moreau, sir, I didn't expect you home so early." He paused, deep brown eyes meeting hers with that burning intensity. "Couldn't stay away tonight." The words carried layers, business pressures perhaps, but something deeper, more personal. He poured coffee, then leaned against the counter near her. Silence stretched, condensed, and heavy. Emily's heart pounded. Confusion and fear warred with a pull she couldn't name. Finally, he spoke low. "The children, they're different with you, lighter." Remorse edged his voice, gnawing guilt for failing Lucia, for the cold years since her death in that rival confrontation. He had armored himself against feeling, believing love invited destruction. Emily nodded timidly, voice soft. "They're good kids, just hurting." His gaze softened violently. "Like you." The words struck deep. Tears pricked her eyes, memories of pitiful poverty flooding, thin from hunger, sleep-deprived from endless cold, humiliated by turned backs and empty shelters. "I don't know how to be anything else anymore," she whispered, polite but trembling. Nick stepped closer, inner conflict raging. That passionate surge, the overwhelming love igniting from the rain-soaked night, burned hotter, tearing at his resolve. "You don't have to be," he said roughly. "Not here." Their conversations deepened over nights. He confessed crushing guilt over Lucia, how he should have protected her better, how the children witnessed her loss. Emily, gradually, revealed fragments. Travis's cruelty, repeated miscarriages blamed on her, being thrown out with nothing. Each shared pain drew them nearer, stolen glances lingering, accidental brushes of hands sending sparks. One night, rain lashed windows again. Emily stood at the sink, dizziness sweeping as old fears resurfaced. Nick approached from behind, close enough his warmth reached her. "You okay?" She turned, shock numbing her. His eyes held raw torment, remorse clashing with fierce need. Sometimes it all feels too much, like I'll wake up back on that bench." He reached out slowly, fingers brushing her arm, gentle, restrained. Electricity surged, both froze. His hand hovered near her cheek, almost touching, then pulled back. Violent inner war. Love her, protect her, but risk loss again? "I'm not letting that happen," he said, voice low with consuming emotion. Emily's breath caught, confusion, fear, yet a responding warmth. From destitute powerlessness to this man's burning gaze, it tore her world apart. Drama escalated one afternoon. Driving the children home, Vinny spotted tails, rival vehicles shadowing aggressively. Tension rose. A bold blockade forced a stop on a quiet street. Men approached, postures threatening. Emily's horror peaked, old anxiety of street danger paralyzing her. Nick arrived swiftly, stepping out with commanding calm. The confrontation was tense, sharp words, unyielding stares, but his reputation and presence forced retreat without blows. As rivals dispersed, Nick's eyes met Emily's through the window. protective love blazing. That evening, in the kitchen's quiet glow, emotion crested. Nick stood close, confessing more, how her strength amid suffering mirrored what he lost in Lucia, yet stirred new hope. Emily shared her hidden pregnancy terror, 8 weeks, fragile after losses. Shock stilled him, then he knelt slowly, hand on her arm. That's ours to protect now. Passion overwhelmed, intense, burning love surging against remorse. They stood inches apart, air thick. His hand rose again, this time cupping her cheek gently. Emily leaned in slightly, guarded walls cracking. Almost a kiss, breath mingling, hearts pounding, then both pulled back, afraid of the intensity tearing them. In condensed stillness afterward, Emily touched her cheek, tears falling. From humiliating poverty to this powerful man's tender gaze, unfair life twisting violently, yet offering impossible warmth. Nick paced later alone, heart in turmoil. Remorse for past failures, fear of new vulnerability, yet passionate love for Emily consuming him entirely. The flames kindled brighter, healing and dangerous, as bonds deepened in the mansion's luxurious shadow. The fragile peace that had begun to settle over the Garden District mansion shattered one humid afternoon in early spring. Emily Harper stood in the sunlit kitchen, folding freshly laundered children's clothes, her hands moving with the quiet rhythm she had come to cherish. The luxury still struck her like a wave. The soft cotton fabrics, the scent of expensive detergent, the gleaming appliances humming gently, worlds away from the humiliating nights she had spent digging through donation bins for anything clean, thin body shivering against cold winds that offered no mercy. Security had tightened subtly in recent weeks, more guards at the gates, Vinny's watchful eyes lingering longer. Emily noticed but said nothing, her guarded curiosity tempered by fear of disrupting this impossible haven. It began with small, chilling intrusions. A bouquet of red roses arrived at the gate one morning. No card, thorns carefully removed. Rosa brought them inside with a frown, but Emily's stomach twisted in horror. Red roses, Travis's favorite, the ones he had sent before the worst nights. She said nothing, numbness spreading, old anxiety clawing back. Days later, an envelope slid under the mansion's side gate. Photographs of Emily with the children, at school drop-off, in the garden, taken from distance, the children's faces circled in red marker. Emily found it while retrieving a forgotten drawing Sophie had dropped. Her hands shook violently. Dizziness swept her, the world tilting as past powerlessness flooded back. She hid the photos, terror silencing her, but the inner tearing intensified. Why now, when hope had just begun to root? Nick Moreau learned quickly. His investigators, discreet, efficient, traced the deliveries. That evening, as rain drummed the windows again, he confronted her gently in the study, photos spread on the mahogany desk. "Emily, these came today?" Her voice emerged soft, timid. I didn't want to worry you, sir." Tears welled at the unfairness, finally safe, yet hunted still. His eyes darkened with torment. The passionate love burning since that rainy night surged fiercer, clashing against gnawing remorse. He had failed Lucia once, could not fail again. "You never have to hide threats from me." Investigators dug deeper. The bombshell came late one night, Nick pacing the shadowed study, phone to ear, face paling beneath controlled fury. Travis Kane, Emily's abusive ex-husband, had not merely stalked, he had been secretly laundering millions through Nick's own French Quarter casinos for years, skimming profits, owing the Moreau family $8 million in hidden debts. Travis was not just her tormentor. He had betrayed Nick's empire from within. Emily, summoned quietly, stood trembling as Nick explained. Shock numbed her completely. Confusion, horror, deep disorientation crashing like waves. The man who had blamed her for miscarriages, thrown her out destitute, had entangled with this powerful world? The disparity tore violently. Her pitiful poverty against these vast sums, her powerlessness against hidden criminal webs. Nick's inner conflict raged to breaking. Remorse consumed him, not just for Lucia, but for unknowingly harboring a traitor who had destroyed the woman he now loved with overwhelming, burning intensity. That love, passionate from the first moment, now fueled protective rage. "He won't touch you," Nick said, voice rough with emotion. "Or the children, or the new life you're carrying." In panic, tears spilling, Emily finally confessed her pregnancy. 8 weeks, fragile secret kept in terror. The room stilled, condensed emotion thick. Nick dropped slowly to one knee before her, hand gently on her arm. Shock gave way to fierce vow. "This child, yours, ours to protect. I'll love it as my own." His eyes blazed, passionate love surging against remorse, tearing his guarded heart. "I'll burn everything to keep you all safe." External threats escalated. One afternoon, escorting the children home, the SUV was tailed aggressively, rival vehicles weaving close, forcing a tense slowdown on a tree-lined street. Vinny radioed urgently. Emily clutched Lucas, horror paralyzing her as memories of powerless nights resurfaced. Nick arrived swiftly, stepping from his vehicle with commanding calm. The confrontation unfolded boldly, men emerging, words sharp and threatening over territories and debts. But Nick's presence, reputation, and quiet steel forced standoff. Rivals retreated slowly, promises of reckoning hanging, suspense thick. Emily watched from the window, heart pounding, shock at his power, gratitude tearing at old wounds. From destitute invisibility to this man's fierce shield, it numbed and healed simultaneously. That night, in quiet kitchen glow, Emily wept silently. Unfair life, poverty's humiliation, losses, now hunted amid luxury, tore her inner world apart. Yet Nick's vow echoed, his love a burning anchor. Nick stood alone later, fists clenched, gnawing guilt for past blindness, violent conflict over risks. Yet passionate love for Emily, for the unborn child, consumed him entirely. The revelation twisted everything, personal betrayal intersecting past cruelty. Threats circled closer, but so did their bond, forged stronger in fire. The revelation about Travis Kane's laundering had already shaken the foundations of the Moreau Empire, but the deeper truth that followed struck like lightning in a clear sky. Nick Moreau sat alone in his dimly lit study late one night, papers and ledgers spread across the antique desk, the weight of wealth and power pressing heavier than ever. Investigators had dug further into the casino records, tracing skimmed funds back through hidden accounts. What they uncovered shattered him completely. Lucia's death 3 years earlier, long believed a rival hit meant to wound him, had been no outside attack. It was ordered by Victor Langlois, Nick's own underboss and closest confidant for decades, to silence her. Lucia had stumbled upon irregularities in the books, questions that threatened to expose the laundering scheme Travis facilitated. Victor, fearing exposure, eliminated the one person whose discovery could unravel everything. Nick's wife, the mother of his children, killed by his trusted brother-in-arms. Nick's hands trembled as he read the final report. Gnawing remorse exploded into consuming agony. Guilt not just for failing to protect her, but for trusting the wrong man, for building an empire on foundations that invited such betrayal. Violent inner conflict tore him apart. Rage at Victor, self-loathing for blindness, and beneath it all, the burning, passionate love for Emily that now felt both salvation and terrifying risk. How could he protect her, the children, the unborn child, when betrayal lurked within his own circle? Emily found him there at dawn, drawn by instinct. She stood in the doorway, thin frame silhouetted, eyes wide with concern. "Mr. Moreau, sir, you haven't slept." He looked up, face ravaged by torment. Slowly, voice breaking, he told her everything. Emily listened in stunned horror, dizziness sweeping as the world tilted again. Shock numbed her, confusion crashing with the violent realization that her past tormentor had indirectly caused the grief haunting this home. Tears spilled for Lucia, for the children, for the unfair cruelty layering upon cruelty. Her voice emerged soft, timid. "I'm so sorry. For all of you." The disparity struck harder, her own pitiful poverty, malnourished nights scavenging, humiliated and powerless, now entangled with this vast web of wealth and hidden treachery. Nick rose, pacing in agony. "I brought danger into my own house. I let it touch Lucia, and now you." Passionate love surged fiercer, overwhelming his remorse. He stopped before her, eyes blazing. "But I won't let it touch you. Never." External pressures mounted. Rival factions, sensing weakness from whispers of internal strife, grew bolder. One morning, escorting Sophie to a garden playdate, the SUV faced an unexpected blockade. Vehicles crossing aggressively, men stepping out with challenging stares. Emily's heart seized in anxiety and fear, old powerlessness resurfacing as she shielded Sophie. Nick arrived within minutes, confronting the leaders directly on the street. Tension crackled, sharp accusations over territories, veiled threats. But his commanding presence and quiet authority forced standoff. Rivals withdrew slowly, suspense lingering like storm clouds. Emily watched, guarded curiosity mixing with gratitude that tore her inner world. From destitute isolation to this man's fierce shield, it numbed old pains yet intensified the emotional storm. That evening, in condensed kitchen stillness, Emily confessed deeper fears, her pregnancy's fragility, terror of loss repeating. Nick listened, inner conflict peaking, remorse for Lucia's stolen future clashing with burning need to build one with Emily. He took her hands gently. "Whatever comes, we're in it together." His voice rough with emotion, love intense and overwhelming. Yet the betrayal's wound festered. Nick summoned Victor privately to a neutral warehouse, confrontation raw but restrained. Victor confessed, fear driving him to unthinkable act. Nick spared his life, banishing him forever, but the cost carved deeper scars. Emily, learning later, felt shock and disorientation anew. Unfair life, her poverty's humiliation, now this intimate treachery, tore violently at her heart. Tears came quietly for the family fractured long before she arrived. In quiet moments, Nick held her closer, passionate love a burning anchor amid torment. From suspicion to this overwhelming surge, intense, healing, yet dangerous, their bond deepened in betrayal's shadow. The mansion's wealth gleamed colder now, power's price exposed. Yet amid escalating drama, threats circling, inner worlds tearing, love burned brighter, forging strength from shared pain. In the wake of Victor's betrayal and banishment, a heavy storm rolled over New Orleans one thunderous night, rain lashing the mansion's tall windows like angry fists. The house, for all its gleaming wealth, marble halls, crystal lights, gardens blooming despite winter, felt colder, shadowed by fresh wounds. Nick Moreau paced the shadowed corridors, tormented beyond bearing, gnawing remorse for Lucia's true murder, violent rage at his former friend's treachery, and consuming fear that history might repeat. All clashed against the passionate love for Emily that now burned like wildfire in his chest. Emily Harper found him in the study, lightning flashes illuminating his ravaged face. She stood timidly in the doorway, thin frame wrapped in a soft robe Rosa had given her, hands clasped to still their tremble. "Mr. Moreau, sir, you should rest." He stopped, eyes meeting hers with raw intensity. The sight of her, still malnourished from those pitiful months of poverty, yet carrying new life, tore him further. "How can I rest," he said roughly, "when everything I built let monsters in?" She stepped closer, voice soft and polite despite inner turmoil. "It's not your fault. You couldn't have known." But the storm outside mirrored the one within. Grief and rage crested. Nick crossed the space in strides, stopping inches from her. "I should have known. I should have protected her better. And now you." His voice cracked, passionate love surging, overwhelming and fierce. "I can't lose you too." Emily's breath caught, shock, confusion, deep disorientation sweeping as thunder boomed. From destitute powerlessness, cold winds, hunger's humiliation, to this powerful man's desperate gaze. Tears welled at life's unfair cruelty. In that charged stillness, emotion exploded. Nick cupped her face gently at first, then with desperate need, drawing her close. Their lips met, raw, all-consuming, years of buried grief and newfound hope igniting into fierce passion. The kiss deepened, tender yet wild, hands clutching as if anchoring against the storm. Lightning flashed, thunder shook the walls, but nothing matched the violent intensity tearing their inner worlds. They broke apart breathless, foreheads touching. Emily trembled, numbness giving way to overwhelming warmth. Nick's eyes blazed, love burning intense from that first rainy night, now unbound. "I love you," he whispered roughly. "God help me, I love you so much it terrifies me." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm scared too." The disparity struck violently, her past misery against this impossible love. He pulled her into his arms, holding tight as sobs shook her, grief for old losses, shock at new belonging. Passion reignited, another kiss, deeper, healing old wounds with fierce tenderness. That night, in the mansion's luxurious quiet, they found solace in each other, desperate, all-consuming union that left them shaken, irrevocably bound. Morning brought fragile peace, but threats escalated. Cornered by debt and exposure, Travis made a desperate move. At a school charity event Sophie attended, he struck, snatching her amid chaos, vanishing with demands. Emily return or lose the girl. Panic gripped the mansion. Emily collapsed in horror, dizziness and pain overwhelming, old powerlessness resurfacing violently. My fault, all my fault. Nick's torment peaked, remorse, rage, burning love fueling iron resolve. No, I'll bring her home. The rescue unfolded, heart-pounding. Nick's men tracked leads, a tense street confrontation with Travis's remaining allies, bold standoffs, sharp words, unyielding postures. But Nick's authority prevailed without chaos. In the climax, at an abandoned warehouse, Nick faced Travis directly. Suspense thick, demands sharp, but evidence and presence forced surrender. Sophie returned unharmed, clinging to Emily in tearful reunion. Amid chaos, Emily's estranged brother Jake, recovering Marine, former addict seeking amends, appeared unexpectedly, aiding the final push. His sincere effort cracked Emily's guarded heart, tentative forgiveness blooming, reinforcing family as chosen. That night, in condensed stillness, Emily held Sophie close, tears for unfair dangers endured. Nick watched, love fierce and protective. Passion reignited later, storm passed, moonlight soft. In each other's arms, love became explosive, tender yet wild, healing every scar from poverty's humiliation to betrayal's pain. From suspicion to this overwhelming surge, passionate, intense, burning, their bond forged unbreakable in fire. The days following Sophie's safe return passed in a haze of heightened security and raw emotion within the Garden District mansion. Guards patrolled the grounds more visibly, their presence a constant reminder of dangers barely averted. Emily Harper moved through the luxurious halls like a ghost, thin hands often resting protectively over her still flat stomach, carrying the fragile new life that now felt both miracle and vulnerability. The wealth surrounding her, polished marble, fresh flowers in crystal vases, the quiet hum of opulence, contrasted violently with memories of her destitute past, malnourished nights rummaging cold trash for scraps, sleep-deprived body aching from wind-whipped benches, humiliated by indifference. She replayed the kidnapping endlessly, horror at her past cruelty endangering this innocent child, guilt tearing her heart with numbing intensity. Unfair life, from powerless poverty to this family's heart, yet still drawing shadows. Nick Moreau channeled torment into action. With ironclad evidence from casino records and Emily's documented history, authorities moved swiftly. Travis Kane faced federal charges, money laundering, kidnapping, decades looming. Victor's forced confession, extracted in banishment's shadow, sealed Lucia's murder case, closing old wounds with painful finality. Yet revenge carried cost. Nick confronted remaining loose ends personally. One humid evening, intelligence led to a tense street meeting with Travis's desperate allies, men cornered, postures aggressive on a dimly lit French Quarter corner. Words flew sharp, accusations of betrayal, demands for settlement. Suspense thickened as groups faced off, but Nick's commanding calm and reputation forced de-escalation, rivals dispersing with muttered concessions. Emily waited at home, anxiety peaking, dizziness sweeping at every delay. When Nick returned unscathed, relief crashed with tears. "It's over?" Her voice soft, timid. He pulled her close, inner conflict raging, remorse for lives touched by his world, yet burning love, fierce and protective. For him, yes. Reconciliation bloomed unexpectedly amid resolution. Jake Harper, Emily's estranged brother, former Marine battling addiction's aftermath, had aided crucially in Sophie's rescue, risking much for amends. He appeared at the gates one afternoon, hesitant, seeking forgiveness for abandoning her during darkest years. Emily met him in the garden, heart tearing violently, confusion, old pain, guarded curiosity clashing. "Jake, why now?" His eyes mirrored her past struggles. "I was lost too, but seeing you fight, I want to be better for you." Tears fell in condensed stillness. Unfair past, siblings separated by hardship's cruelty. Yet hope stirred. With Nick's cautious approval, Jake earned limited visits, sincere efforts mending blood ties while reinforcing chosen family. Drama escalated one final time. Residual rivals, sensing shift, attempted bold intimidation. Vehicles shadowing the mansion, anonymous calls. Nick met them head-on in unexpected confrontations. A nighttime street standoff near the river, words cutting like blades over loyalties and consequences. Tension peaked, but his unyielding authority prevailed, threats retreating into shadows. Emily watched from afar sometimes, horror and gratitude intertwining. From pitiful powerlessness to this man's shield, it numbed old humiliations, healed with passionate intensity. Evenings brought quiet healing. Children clung closer. Sophie drawing family portraits, including Emily. Lucas calling her Mommy Emmy in innocent joy. Mason offering rare hugs. Jake's visits added layers. Shared stories of hard pasts, tentative laughter. Nick's torment softened gradually, remorse yielding to burning love. In private moments, passion reignited, tender embraces turning fierce, kisses healing every scar from poverty's cold to betrayal's sting. One night, under starlit balcony, Nick held her. "You've given us everything," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. Emily leaned into him, tears of release. "You saved me first." Revenge settled, reconciliation rooted, family forged stronger, chosen and blood in wealth's protective embrace. With Travis behind bars facing decades of consequences, and Victor's confession closing the dark chapter of Lucia's true fate, a profound quiet finally settled over the Garden District mansion. The threats that had circled like storms dispersed, leaving space for healing to take root. Yet victory carried its own weight. Emily Harper often stood at the wide windows overlooking blooming magnolias, hand resting on her gently rounding stomach, tears falling silently at life's unfair journey. From absolute rock bottom, thin and malnourished, sleep-deprived nights enduring cold winds that cut to the bone, humiliated by powerlessness and turned backs, to this opulent safety, the disparity still tore violently at her heart. Shock and deep disorientation lingered. Dizziness sometimes swept her when remembering the pitiful past against present luxury. Nick Moreau watched her with burning intensity, inner torment easing yet never fully gone. Gnawing remorse for failures past clashed with overwhelming passionate love, fierce, protective, consuming from that first rainy rescue. He had everything: wealth, power, fortress walls, yet knew true riches now lay in this family rebuilding around them. One golden afternoon in late spring, Nick led Emily to the lush courtyard, strings of cafe lights twinkling though daylight lingered, magnolias perfuming the air. The children waited eagerly, Mason standing tall, Sophie clutching flowers, Lucas bouncing with excitement. Jake stood nearby too, reconciliation complete, his presence a quiet testament that blood ties could heal. Nick took Emily's hands, eyes deep with emotion. "You've given us light again," he said, voice rough. "Not just the children, me. I was lost in shadows until you." Tears welled. Emily whispered softly, "You saved me first, sir, from cold, from despair." The ceremony was intimate. Rosa, Vinny, closest trusted souls, Jake bearing witness. Emily wore simple white silk flowing gently over her pregnancy, grandmother's locket at her throat. The children walked ahead, scattering petals, Mason solemn, Sophie beaming, Lucas giggling. Vows came from the heart. Nick promised protection through every storm, love unwavering in light or darkness. Emily vowed to stay, to nurture this chosen family, to build where poverty once destroyed. When pronounced husband and wife, Nick kissed her tenderly, passion restrained yet burning, sealing promises. Children rushed in, embracing, Jake smiling through tears. Love transcended wealth or past hardship, skin color or circumstance, pure compassion binding them. That night, under cafe lights and stars, passion ignited fully, tender yet explosive, healing every wound from cold nights to cruel betrayals. In each other's arms, they found home. Months later, Emily gave birth to a healthy daughter, dark hair, bright eyes mirroring both parents. Surrounded by Mason, Sophie, Lucas, Jake, and Rosa, Nick held Emily close, family complete. Yet victory's deepest gift was perspective. Emily often reflected. Knowledge of suffering taught compassion. Knowledge of loss taught gratitude. Knowledge of rescue taught trust. Knowledge of forgiveness taught strength. Knowledge of love taught everything. Each lesson carved deep. Education in resilience, education in choosing kindness, education in rebuilding after ruin, education in seeing worth beyond wealth or want, education in embracing family, chosen and born. Nick, once armored in remorse, found peace. Lesson in vulnerability's power. Lesson in love's triumph over fear. Lesson in protection's true meaning. Lesson in redemption through second chances. Lesson in building legacy beyond empire. Their story whispered timeless truths. Knowledge shapes us. Lessons guide us. Education heals us. Again and again. If this tale touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share the YouTube channel Alex Truths to enjoy many engaging videos every day. How did this story make you feel? Does it connect to moments in your real life? Share your emotions in the comments below. We truly want to hear the feelings deep within your hearts. We wish everyone watching good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. Goodbye, and we'll see you in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.